Have you ever felt like you're just on autopilot? Like some of your habits are so deeply ingrained they're impossible to break? Well, what if I told you the power to change all that is literally inside your head? Today, we're going to dive into the amazing science of how your brain actually forms habits, and more importantly, how you can become the architect of your own mind.
So let's start with a really simple question that I think we can all relate to. Why do we have that constant, almost magnetic pull to check our phones? Even when you know deep down there's probably nothing new or important there. The answer, it turns out, isn't about a lack of willpower. It's all about your brain's chemistry.
To really get a handle on that pull, we first have to look at the device itself. I want you to try thinking of your phone not just as a tool, but as a perfectly engineered slot machine that you carry around with you everywhere you go.
Now, the secret ingredient here is something called variable rewards. Think about it. A slot machine is so addictive because you never know when you're going to win. Your phone works on the exact same principle. Sometimes you check it and there's a great message from a friend or a funny video. Other times, nothing. It's that unpredictability that creates this powerful compulsion to just keep checking.
Okay, so that's the external part, the trigger in our pocket. But what's actually happening inside our brains that makes this little slot machine so effective? Let's get into the chemistry of it all.
Here is a super important distinction we have to make. We've all heard dopamine called the pleasure chemical, but that's not quite the full story. It's really more accurate to call it the motivation chemical. It's the thing that drives you to seek out a reward. It's that feeling of anticipation, that little voice in your head that says, hey, go check that, something good might happen.
And here's where you can see that whole cycle in action. It starts with a trigger, right? A little ping from a notification. Boom, dopamine is released. That dopamine makes you want to check. You take the action, you pick up the phone. But because that reward is variable, you never know what you're going to get, your brain flags this whole sequence as being really, really important. And that just reinforces the loop, making the urge to check even stronger next time.
So what's the long-term consequence of being in this constant loop? It's pretty profound, actually. Our brains are always anticipating that next little hit, which leaves us in this state of continuous partial attention. You know the feeling where you're never really truly focused on any one thing? It gets harder and harder to do deep work because your dopamine system is always primed for that next quick, easy reward.
Now, this mechanism isn't just about our phones, not at all. It's actually the foundation for all of our habits, both the good and the bad. You see, our brain is designed to save energy, so it loves to create these little autopilot systems. Let's take a look at how that works.
Every single habit you have, everyone, follows this incredibly simple three-part structure. First, there's a cue. That's the trigger. Maybe it's the alarm going off in the morning. That kicks off the routine, the automatic action, like brewing a pot of coffee. And that leads to the reward, the feeling of satisfaction, like that first warm, energizing sip. Cue, routine, reward. That is the fundamental building block of all of our automatic behaviors.
So where does all this happen in the brain? Well, as a habit gets more and more automatic, the front part of your brain, the part that makes conscious decisions, it kind of just powers down. It hands the whole operation over to a deeper region called the basal ganglia. You can think of this as your brain's habit center, running these programs in the background without you even needing to think about it. And inside this system, you can basically think of two chemicals acting like a gas pedal and a brake. One chemical, glutamate, is the go signal. It fires up the habit. But the wild part is, as soon as that habit starts, another chemical, GABA, basically slams on the stop button for everything else, which makes it incredibly difficult to interrupt a habit once it's started. This is exactly why it feels almost impossible to stop eating from a bag of chips once you've had that first one.
Okay, so our brains are literally hardwired for these automatic habits. And I know that might sound a little bit discouraging, but this is where the story gets really, really exciting. Because the exact same system that builds habits can be used to rebuild them. You can, quite literally, reprogram your own brain. The one key concept that makes all of this change possible is neuroplasticity. This is the science that proves your brain is not fixed, it's not set in stone. Think of it more like a dynamic living network that you can physically re-sculpt with your thoughts and your actions, at any age. It's the biological foundation for all learning and all growth.
So how does this rewiring actually happen on a physical level? Well, a major player in this is a remarkable little molecule called BDNF, which stands for brain-derived neurotrophic factor. But really, the easiest way to think about it is like fertilizer or Miracle-Gro for your brain cells.
BDNF does three absolutely critical things for us. It keeps our current neurons healthy, it encourages new ones to grow, and maybe most importantly, it helps forge the connections between them. So when you make a conscious choice, like going for a run instead of reaching for a snack, BDNF is the molecule that helps physically wire that new behavior into your brain.
And there's a name for this physical process. It's called long-term potentiation. Think of it like trying to make a new path in a forest. The very first time you walk it, it's difficult, you're pushing through resistance. But every single time you repeat that path, it gets clearer, it gets wider, and it gets easier to travel. That is exactly what's happening in your brain. Every time you practice a new routine, that connection between your neurons gets stronger and faster. The new habit literally gets hardwired.
All right, let's pull all of this together. We've seen how our brains can get hijacked by these automatic loops, and we've seen exactly how habits are formed. But we've also discovered these incredible biological tools that we all have to take back control and consciously shape our own future.
So the most important takeaway here is that each of these concepts is a tool you can use. Because you understand the dopamine loop, you now have the power to recognize your triggers. Because you know about the habit loop, you can learn how to interrupt the routine. And because you know about neuroplasticity, you know for a fact that you have the power to intentionally build new, better pathways in your brain.
And this is really the ultimate message. Your brain is not something that just happens to you. It is something you are actively building every single day. Every choice you make, every action you take and repeat, those are the tools you're using to shape its structure for the future.
So I'll just leave you with this one thought. You are holding the tools. You are the architect. What new path are you going to start walking today? What choice are you going to make to start shaping your brain for tomorrow?